When God stamped his creation complete, he declared it to be very good. From his perspective, he looked down on his process and the results, and everything was good in both quality and in character. History and our personal experiences lead us to a different conclusion, though. Evil snaked its way into the good creation in the garden, and the nature of humans and their relationships were irrevocably changed. Cain killed his brother. Evil became the new reality, and history is replete with a lengthy list of evil acts, and we sense little promise that they're going to end anytime soon. For the believer and skeptic alike, the obvious question arises: if God is truly all-powerful, then why does evil exist? This question has perplexed theologians and philosophers alike for all of history. Approaching the question from a logical perspective doesn't bring any satisfaction. Scottish philosopher David Hume, no Christian to be sure, proposed this of God: is he willing to prevent evil but not able to? Well, then he is impotent. This is what Hume says. Is he able to deal with evil but not willing? Well, then he's malevolent. And then Hume proposed this: is he both able, God, is God both able and willing to do something about evil? Well, why is there evil then? The logical error is easily identified in Hume's case. He assumes that God's character is one-dimensional and consists only of his omnipotence. This simplistic perspective also causes enormous struggles for the faithful. If God is good, they reason, he surely wouldn't want evil to happen in this world. But God is good, and evil does exist. So how do we think about this? The problem of evil is an extensive topic, and it's one that could take a lifetime of study and meditation to consider without any promise of arriving at a definitive conclusion. In order to gain an understanding sufficient to address our day-to-day questions, we're going to look into the problem of evil to the same depth that we dove in, looking into the reality of suffering in our life. Evil imposes itself in our lives in two different but sadly familiar ways. Natural evil experiences are the things that don't involve other human beings. Earthquakes, tornadoes, floods, and that kind of thing are examples of natural evil. This is the evil that we experience in the natural realm that appears to be contrary to the good of human welfare that we believe God intends for us. And sadly, it also includes deadly viruses, cancer, and other aberrations of the perfect creation. Contrasted with natural evils, moral evil is directly attributable to the choices and the actions of our fellow creatures. These forms of evil are more readily identified. War, crime, racism, slavery, and any of the thousands and thousands of lesser injustices. Just this brief catalog of examples makes our heads spin with the pervasiveness of the problem of evil. Christians tend to think about the problem of evil in two different ways. First, we look at the problem religiously whenever we experience the effects of evil, and then allow ourselves to question the greatness or the goodness of God. For example, we are struck by a devastating diagnosis, for ourselves, or maybe the unexpected loss of a loved one. And this causes us to stop and question how a good and loving God could let this happen. The experience of evil threatens to disrupt our relationship with God. In more reflective moments, when we think we're safe, we think about the problem theologically, processing the problem of evil in a logical set of steps. Now, this is a much bigger field when we ask, something like, given who God is, how could evil even exist? That's a tough question, isn't it? Well, processing the answer is even tougher because it requires that you and I hold three ideas in tension at the same time. Idea one is God's power, that is, his omnipotence. On this side, we have to hold his goodness. And then over here, the reality of the existence of evil. Now, all of these seem contradictory, I guess because they are, but these are the truths that we have to wrestle with in exploring the issue of evil. The question of why evil exists in God's creation is both the beginning and the end of the question. The contradiction between his power and his character, and then the existence of evil, makes this an issue that it demands a response from us. As unsatisfying as the answer might be, sadly, the Bible does not give an explanation as to how or why evil exists, only that it does. Theologians have developed countless answers through the years trying to develop a definitive explanation, but none has the direct support of the Bible. One answer that does find support in the Bible has to do with God's creation of moral creatures, that's you and me, and his creation of us with free will. In order to prevent or halt the exercise of evil acts, God would need to override that free will, and that in itself is a contradictory act. When God created the world and he filled it with humans who act according to their free choices, he conceded the possibility that some might act in an evil manner. The garden gives us our earliest example, followed shortly by the first murder, and then the increasing corruption of all humankind. Evil exists in tandem with free will creatures who can choose to be or do evil. Simply allowing that evil exists in God's world is enough to disrupt the relationship between him and some people. They can't believe that evil and its effect and a good God can coexist, so they choose to acknowledge the pain and refuse the Creator. Believers who pass this point and delve deeper into the Bible are often shocked to find that it does point to a direct relationship between God and evil. As we look at these examples, there are two things that we have to keep in mind. First, the responsibility for evil remains with the moral agent who performs the evil act. And second, on top of that, the Bible never blames God for evil or shows him as taking any kind of pleasure in it. Of the dozens of examples that we could turn to, let's begin with one of the most well-known, the case of Joseph and his brothers. Genesis tells the story of the evil jealousy of the brothers that drives them to murderously cast him into a pit, hoping to see him gone forever. Now, they later relent and pull him out of the pit and sell him into slavery, which is equally evil. To read through the rest of this story is to see then this series of events that would later saved the lives of these same brothers and their families. The famous verse that serves as the conclusion of the story points to the positive outcome of their evil intent. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. You see, God's overriding providential will is accomplished, in this case directly, through the evil actions of men. Isaiah records God saying, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. Now, that's in the King James Version. Newer translations soften evil to calamity or disaster, maybe to preserve God's image or something of that nature. Jeremiah's Lamentations also credits God with evil, saying, Is it not from the mouth of the Most High that good and evil come? Job suffers unspeakably at the hands of the Chaldeans and the Sabaeans and the natural disasters that destroy his family. But Job recognizes the ultimate source of what he's enduring. The prophet Jonah is driven into the sea, not by God, but by the hands of the sailors. But still the prophet recognizes the real source of his near drowning. In each case, in each of these cases, God uses evil actions to promote his good outcomes. Even the most evil act in all of history, the crucifixion of the innocent Christ, is clearly ordained by God. Clearly, the omnipotent God uses evil in the hands of moral agents for his own good purposes. Evil is not some circumstance or power that lies, just beyond the reach of the all-powerful God. Evil is completely within and under the control of the omnipotent God. At his use for punishment, correction, and even, as we've seen, good. God's omnipotence makes evil not something that we have to explain away or create an excuse for, but rather it's a reality under God's full control, and it's subservient to his purposes. The Bible offers no explanation for the relationship between God and evil. And so we have to defer to mystery in this case and accept that you and I will not be able to understand it here in our mortal state. As difficult as this is, there is a promise inherent in this that we discover. Because evil is not outside of God's control, we can find peace in one of the most hopeful of all the verses, Romans 8:28. God works all things together for good, even those things that appear to you and me to have immediate negative effects in our life or in the lives of our loved ones. I know this has been short, but I thank you for watching this episode of 167. Though we've just scratched the surface in understanding evil, and we're going to have to defer to mystery in place of a full explanation, one thing is certain to fuel our worship. God is in all-powerful control over all things, and his goodness assures us that he can be trusted and worshiped even in the midst of evil being a part of our day-to-day reality. Thanks for watching, and God bless.